Hey there, and welcome to Code Academy. My name is Galina, and I'm a developer from New York. Today, we'll be covering the Classroom Grades Analyzer project, part of the Learn Java course. Now, before we get started, let's take a look at some of the concepts we'll be working with today. To complete this project, you'll need to be familiar with an array list, the if-else statement, the for-each loop, as well as object-oriented Java. Now, let's pull up our project and get started. In this project, we'll create a simple tool to help analyze classroom grades stored in an array list. At the end of this project, the analyzer you built will be able to retrieve the classroom average. Upon completion, feel free to explore and add functionality to your grades analyzer. All right, awesome. Let's jump right into step one. Note that Java provides built-in classes, but that does not mean that they are readily available in all Java programs. Some classes are stored in Java packages. The correct Java package must first be imported into a Java program before a certain class can be used. The ArrayList class is part of a Java package. On line 1, import the correct package by typing the following. All right, so let's navigate into our code editor and type the line import Java util array list. All right, awesome. Let's check off step 1 and move on to step 2. Next, we want to create a class called Grade Analyzer. Let's declare our public class Grade Analyzer along with our curly braces. And in step 3, we want to create a Grade Analyzer constructor. You can leave the contents of the constructor empty. Let's navigate inside of our class and declare a public Grade Analyzer constructor. Now, because the contents of the constructor are empty, I'm going to have an empty set of parentheses. Great. Now we're done with step 3 and on to step 4. Let's create a method that will return the average of all grades. Create a method called getAverage. It should return an integer. So let's navigate outside of our constructor, but still inside of our class, and create our method. We have a public int getAverage, then parentheses inside of which our parameter will go, followed by a code block. Perfect. We're done with step 4, and let's move on to step 5. The getAverage method should accept an ArrayList parameter that holds integers. Call the parameter grades. We have a hint. The parameter is written as so. All right, so that parameter will go inside of our parentheses. So our ArrayList contains integers, and the name of our parameter is grades. Awesome. Let's move on to step 6. The first thing the method should do is check to see that the array list it's analyzing is not empty. Create an if statement that checks if the size of grades is less than 1. So let's navigate inside of our method and create our if statement. So we'll use the if keyword, grades, and we want to check if the size of grades, so that's grades.size is less than 1. Then we want to do something inside of the code block. Now let's check off step 6 and on to step 7. Inside of the if block, print out a friendly error message to the user indicating that the array list is empty. On the next line, return 0. Now before I jump into this, I want to quickly point out that the reason I use these parentheses is because size is a Java method. And when we're calling a method to action, we do need the parentheses. All right, so we want to print out a friendly error message to the user indicating that the array list is empty. So let's use system.out println to say the array list is empty. And on the next line, we want to return 0. Now let's move on to step number 8. Otherwise, in an else block, find the average of all grades. To find the average, first we will need the sum of all grades. Create an integer called sum and set it equal to 0. So let's do that in our else block. Let's generate our else, inside of which we are declaring a variable called sum, and we're setting it equal to 0. We will update this variable as we sum the grades. All right, let's check off step 8, and we're ready for step 9. Create a for each block that iterates through each grade in the grades array list. So on the next line, let's create our for each block. We'll use the for keyword, parentheses, and a code block. Inside of our parentheses, we want to specify that we are iterating through each grade in the grades array list. So that's int grade in grades. All right, now we've set that up, and let's check off step 9 and move on to step 10. Inside of the for each block, update sum. Set it equal to sum plus grade. This for each loop will add up all the grades. So to set sum equal to sum plus grade, we can do the following. Sum plus equals grade. Now this is the same thing as saying sum equals sum plus grade. You can use either or. All right, now let's check off step 10 and on to step 11. Outside of the for each loop, calculate the average of the grades. Create an integer called average and set it equal to the sum divided by the size of grades. So let's navigate to the outside of our for each loop. Here's where it starts and ends right here. And create an integer called average. And we're going to set it equal to the sum divided by the size of grades. So that's just like we've set up earlier with a semicolon. Perfect. Now we're done with step 11 and let's move on to the next step. On the next line, print out the average. Let's navigate to the next line and print out the average using system.out.println. Simply print the value of average. Now we're done with step 12 and let's move on to 13. Finally, on the next line, return the average. On the following line, we'll use the return keyword and average. Next, we want to create the main method for this program. For that, we'll navigate outside of our method, but still inside of our class. Here's where our method ends. Make some room and create the main method. So let's use public static void main string arguments and a code block. Now once we've set that up, we can check off step 14 and move on to 15. Inside of main, create an array list object that stores integers and call it my classroom. So we have an array list object that stores integers, and we're going to call it my classroom. And now we've completed 15 and on to 16. Next, we want to add the grades 98, 92, 88, 75, 61, 89, and 95 to my classroom. So on the next line, we'll call the add method on our my classroom object and add 98, then a 92, an 88, a 75, a 61, an 89, and finally a 95. Now we've completed 16 and on to 17. On the next line, create a grade analyzer object called myAnalyzer. So we have a grade analyzer, myAnalyzer, and it's a new grade analyzer. Don't forget the parentheses and enter. Next, once we've created this object, we want to call the getAverage method on myAnalyzer and specify my classroom as the argument or parameter. So let's call the getAverage method on our object. And specify an argument of my classroom. Let's check off 18 and on to 19. If you've completed this project correctly, the output should show a class average of 85. Feel free to explore more with the program. Let's save our code and see what we get in the console. Perfect. It looks like we've completed the project correctly, as our output does show a class average of 85. Once you've reached this step, I highly recommend trying out this optional part and honing in your Java method skills. All right, now let's check off step 19 and on to 20. Add comments near the top of the program that describe what the Grade Analyzer program does. So let's navigate to the top of our program and create a comment. So let's write a program that stores grades and calculates the average. All right, and now we're done with step 20, as well as this project. I hope this walkthrough was helpful, and I'll see you next time. Happy coding.